Hi guys, the main motivation for this video is to empirically examine that how long your life savings, retirement savings can last if you withdraw 5%, say 7% or 10% every year, right? And there is a rule they call a 5% rule. It means that from your life savings in the form of 401k or 401k, and your life savings has been invested in S&P 500 index tracking mutual fund. Then if you take out 5% every single year, according to the 5% rule, you could enjoy your retirement life until we die without financial difficulty. So as you may know, the average growth rate of S&P 500 a year is roughly 7.7%, anyway, less than 8% on average. So it makes sense if you take out a certain portion of your life savings, again, which is in the form of 401k, and that money is invested in S&P 500 index tracking mutual fund. If you take out some portion which is smaller than the average growth rate, 7.7% a year, then you could enjoy your life, retirement life, right, without much loss to the initial principal money, right? And the simulation, not simulation, actually I tested with real data from 1930 until most recent year. I did examination how much will be left and how long it takes if I take out 5% or 8% or 10% or 12% each year. So I sell, let's say 5% of my life savings January 1st, the business day, early January each year, and use that 5% for my life expenses, living expenses, and we wait, we don't touch until December 31st that year. And the next year, let's say early January, sell 5% again. Then use that 5% as our living expense until the end of December that year. The next year, we continue, right? So what if I take out 8%? What if I take out 10%, something like that, right? So I assume that my life savings was in 401k, and my 401k is fully invested in S&P 500 index mutual fund. And suppose that I retire December 31st, 1930. So January 1st, or let's say January 2nd, which is not holiday, I sell 5%. And my life savings is $100. It doesn't matter, $1 million, $100 million. Important thing is the ratio, the percentage. And I use the 5% out of the $100, the $5 for my living expense during the period 1931. And what happened is my initial money, $100, will be roughly $170 in 1961. 30 years later, my initial money, $100, will be growing to $170 30 years later, as long as I sell 5% each year. But assume that if you have to pay income tax, you could assume your income tax rate would be 30%, 40%. If income tax is 40%, even though you sell 5%, your actual net cash inflow for you for living expense is 3%, because you have to pay 2%, which is the 40% multiplied by 5% withdrawal, will have to be paid as your income, right? And what if I take out 8% January 1st, 1931, and let's see how much will be left out of the $100 in 1931 January at the end of December 1961. Your $100 will be roughly $65. But luckily, you didn't have to suffer from financial shortage, cash shortage, despite during some underperformance during 1940 something to 1950, right? So your principal money, $100, didn't go to zero. Still, you have roughly $70 on your hand at the end of 1961. What if you take out 10% each year for your living expense? Then initial life savings $100 will be going down to roughly 30 something dollar as of December 31st, 1961. Still, you didn't have much difficulty as long as you take out 10% each year for your living expenses. Again, assume that your income tax bracket is roughly 40%, then your net cash inflow to your pocket is actually 10% times 60% is 6%. Even though you take out 10% of your life saving each year, right? In January each year, actually you have to pay the income tax later. That's why your real cash for your pocket is 6%. Still, so 10% withdrawal can help you continue your retirement life, even though your money, $100, will go down to roughly 30 something dollars 30 years later. What about 14%? If you take out 14%, then $100 will end up being smaller than $10 30 years later, right? This is about during the 1930 to 1960 retirement period. What about the 1940 to 1970? Assume that you retire December 31st, 1940, and you began selling 5% the first business day of January 1941, and use that money for your living expense until December 1941. And first business day of January 1942, you do the same thing. I assume that you are able to sell 5% only from the remaining value as of first business day of January each year. Not defined amount every year for withdrawal, but defined portion, 5%. And $100 will be end up being over $230 30 years later. So if you take out 5% every January, then your initial life savings $100 will be end up growing up to more than $220 30 years later. It depends on when you retire, right? And it depends on a lot of macroeconomic variables such as interest rate, inflation, or there is big shock like an oil shock, right? Or war, big war, World War II, World War III, you name it. What if you take out 8% and you begin your retirement from January 1941 and assume that you keep taking out 8% until January 1971. Then $100 will be end up roughly over $90. Not bad, right? And your money, initial money $100, didn't go down much. Why? Because again, average growth rate of S&P 500 index is roughly 7.7, 7.8% a year. That's why your initial money, $100, end up being slightly less than $100 30 years later. Because even if you take out 8% and S&P 500 index still keep growing, slightly less than 8%. That's why your initial money, life savings, $100, will be remaining still a little bit lower than your initial value, $100 30 years later. However, if you think about time value of the money, $100 in 1941 is not equal to $100, nominal value $100 in 1971. However, important thing is that you are not broke. Still, you are okay. What about 10%? Then December 31st, 1971, your money will be less than $50. What about the 14%? Around the $10, higher than $10, right? Another case, your retirement begins as of December 31st, 1950. Then from the period 1951 to 1981, what will happen to your life savings $100 if you take out 5% each year? The $100 as of January 1st, 1951 will be a little bit higher than $130 as of December 31st, 1981. So as long as you take out 5% each year, your initial life savings tend to be staying based on our test from 1931 to 1950, right? What happened if you take out 8% from 1951 to 1981? Your $100 will be end up being slightly higher than $50, right? And don't forget that 1960, 1970, high inflation and high interest rate because of the Vietnam War, right? So your life savings keep going down because at that time, stock market was not that good because of high inflation and high interest rate. Still, your money, $100, 1951, is not zero as of December 1981. Still not bad, as long as you take out 8%. What if you take out 10%? Your initial life savings $100 will be roughly over 20-something dollars 30 years later. Still not bad. But if you take out 14% each year, your life savings 30 years later, December 31st, 1981, will be end up being less than $10. 1961, similar story. 1961 to 1991, if you take out 14%, then your $100 will be end up around the $6-7 30 years later, right? But if you take out 5% from January 1961 to December 1991, your initial money, $100, will be still remaining as of December 1991, despite some market crash during 1970s, right? Suppose that you begin retirement from 1971 and keep spending 30 years. Wow, what happened? During the 1980, 1990, there was a market booming, right? So $100, 1971 will be around $280, 2001, right? What if you take out 8%? Still, your initial money, $100, will be a little bit higher than $110 30 years later. Because 1990, around the 1994 to 1999, 2000, even though there was a bubble burst in 2001, there was a big rally, very long rally from mid to late 1990s under the Bill Clinton. Still, if you take out 14%, again, your $100 will be end up being smaller than $20 30 years later. It doesn't matter good market, bad market. As long as you take out 5%, regardless of your retirement time point, 1930, 1940, 1950, 1970, still $100 initial money will be staying higher than the initial money $100 because you take out 5% each year, but S&P 500 index is growing around the 7-point-something% on average, right? But if you take out 10%, more than 10%, it is almost impossible to keep the same initial value regardless of the stock market rally or crash because you take out more than the growth of the S&P 500 index, right? So same story. What if you retire let's say you retire December 2000 and now you're still enjoying retirement life, selling 5% every year, January, right? And 2001, January 1st, 2001, your life savings, let's say 401k was $100, and you have been selling 5% every single year, January 1st. Then what happened now? Your money will be $140, 25 years after your retirement in January 2001. What if you take out 8% each year? Then your money will be around $67, $68 as of now. Why? You see that there was a crisis 2008-9, right? And also 2001, there was a dot-com bubble market crash. What if you take out 10% and now you are still enjoying your retirement life so far more than 25 years, then your initial money, $100, is around $40 as of now. And if you take out 14%, then your initial $100 is less than $16, $15, 25 years into your retirement so far, right? So now I empirically examined what can be the good, or I could say maximum percentage to withdraw from your life savings at each year. January 1st or first business day of January each year. Then how much your money will be left 30 years later, and how long it can last, right? So based on our historical examination from 1931, 1941, 2001, as long as you take out 5%, then you could enjoy your retirement life without much financial problem or cash shortage. But you have to consider, you have to pay income tax. So even though you take out 5%, assuming your income tax will be 40% bracket, I decide to be conservative, then it's still okay. Then assuming that net cash, after income tax net cash, you need $100,000 every year. Then how much you need to have before you begin your retirement? Maybe you need a minimum, maybe $3 million. $3 million or $3.5 million. If you have $3.5 million worth in your 401k, which is fully invested in S&P 500 index tracking mutual fund, maybe you could enjoy 5% withdrawal, and you could get net cash, net of income tax, let's say 40%. And to do that, and if you need $100,000 net cash every year, maybe you may need minimum $3.5 million in your 401k. Okay, hopefully this video can give you some brief, some big picture, some idea how much you need to have, assuming that you decide to follow 5% rule before you retire. Hopefully this video will be very, very useful for your long journey for retirement preparation. If you find this is very useful and helpful, and please don't forget to click the subscribe, like, alert, and please spread this video to your friends and your family members. Thank you very much. Have a great day.